Is declaration of interest, as I know full well, this is an important part of the procedure. So if anyone has any interest to declare, please do so now. No, right, and we move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the protocol. I don't think there are any members of the public present. They're extremely small if they are here, and no one online, but I'll read it to you. All visitors must sign into the visitor book at Kilncraig's reception. This includes council staff from other buildings. There's no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today, but if the fire alarm is activated during your visit, you must exit the building immediately. Council officers will direct you to the nearest fire exit and will escort visitors to the building fire assembly point beside the Silver Man at the top of Parliament Walk. Kilncraig's staff should report to their floor's assembly point. You should remain at your assembly point until directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal has advised it is safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle until cleared to do so by the fire marshal to ensure that access routes are kept clear for emergency vehicles. Please note that this is a public meeting and that members of the public could have been in attendance. The meeting will be recorded by the clerk and published online for public viewing. Taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio or video recordings, are not permitted during the meetings unless with the express permission of the chair. Can members attending virtually please virtually activate the cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members attending virtually wish to speak on any point, please indicate by clicking on the raise your hand button, and members in the chamber should also raise their hand, and I will bring you in at the appropriate time. If members have not been able to access all the papers for the meeting, please indicate. Oh, that's fine. Okay. All right. Today we will hear each of the items set out on the agenda, and I will invite the officer to present the paper, and members will then have the opportunity to ask questions before we proceed to debate and decision. Right, let's do that. Next item, the minutes of the meeting from the Planning Committee on 1st of May 2025. You have those minutes in your papers, just go through them page at a time. Any corrections or errors or omissions on page 5? No, anything on page 6? I have one, which is the Planning Committee agreed to section at the bottom decision point 2, determine the CAT request for Marshill House made by ACS. I think that should be changed to Forth Valley Men's Shed FEM. It's a minor point, but just for the sake of accuracy, should be fixed. Okay, there being no other, take it those minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, item 4 on the agenda. Before I do that, I'm just going to make a couple of introductions. There are some faces in the room that some members may not recognise. On my left is Pauline Elliott, who's the interim chief planner, who's with us and joins the team. We're very welcome. And down here we have John Hiscox, who is the interim, an interim principal planner. Welcome to both of you. Hope we hear from you in due course. Right. This paper is an application for approval of matters specified in conditions, reference, etc., concerning the 74 house phase at Barnesville. And the paper was presented by Jacob Huff, principal planner. The background to this is that when the planning permission was granted for the whole site, there were certain conditions laid down, which Jacob will go into. And we are now, our job today is to approve the matters specified in conditions have reached a satisfactory standard, and we can allow the development of phases 2C, 2B. Go ahead, Jacob.
Good morning, Chair. The application we're looking at today is for matters specified in condition, as you just said, of the earlier permission in principle, which was approved a couple of years back now. So it relates to the area in red, and there's already been a number of decisions on the wider site with the background and history given on page 8 of the report. In summary, the site has been approved in principle for up to 1,000 new homes, associated infrastructure and a school. A master plan for the site was also approved by committee in 2023, and none of the earlier matters can be revisited. This application looks specifically at the detailed design of phases 2B and 2C only, and the conditions of the original permission are broken down throughout the report with an assessment provided for each area. Sorry, that's the area in red. Just for context, I've provided some pictures. So works have commenced on other phases of the development. Here we see the beginning of the new spine road, which will run through the centre of the site and is a fundamental part of each phase. This connects into the new roundabout, which is opposite Jewson's on the B908, which is now operational. This is the first phase of the development, developed by Miller Homes, with people now living in some of the properties that are seen on the screen here. This is one of the finished properties, has a paved driveway and is fronted with what will eventually grow to be a new hedgerow, and is similar to what is proposed on some of the plots here. It has an open plan arrangement to the front, with more private garden areas to the rear. Again, that's similar to what is proposed on these phases of development. The expected developer is Persimmons. You can see a Persimmons development just starting at the moment, phase 2A, and at the forefront, one of the many trees which is proposed throughout the development site. All of the properties will have integrated solar panels and present a mixture of different property types, roof designs, finishes and colours. Render is the dominant material, and the designs are influenced by the other properties seen in the locality. It will form an extension of the existing neighbourhood with connection via a green corridor, focused around the rerouted core path from 10 acres, which forms part of our considerations today. Moving on to the plans. This phasing plan here shows the spine road in orange, and the areas in green and yellow are the ones that we're looking at, so 2B and 2C. The phasing plan has already been approved, and phases 1A, 1B and 2A have been given detailed consent and are underway, and we're recommending approval of phases 2B and 2C, importantly subject to the conditions listed in Appendix 1. The main body of the assessment starts on page 12 of the report, and going through the report, conditions 1, 2 and 8 of the original permission don't require any further actions at this point for the reasons set out. And condition 3 has been covered by the earlier approval of the MSC application referred to in 3.36 and was subject to separate conditions applied to that approval, which have satisfactorily been discharged, so they're not revisited. In terms of the other conditions, so condition 4 seeks many details as noted by the various headings. This development proposes 8 different house types throughout this phase, and although they vary in size, they keep similar proportions and similar heights throughout the development. All of the properties have a downstairs toilet, patio doors out to the rear, and an ensuite serving the master bedroom. The example that I've shown here is the largest of the properties, the Lowe's. In terms of the design and finish, there will be a range of finishes and combinations which are shown here, and there are not considered to be any utility or infrastructure concerns. The site plan here demonstrates appropriate road arrangements and good connectivity throughout the development site, and there is sufficient visitor parking as well as 2 parking spaces for each property. Some even have a garage in addition to this. The boundary treatments are similar to the photos that I showed earlier, and children's play facilities are currently under construction in phase 2A of the wider development, which was approved by the earlier master plan. Proposal is supported by a comprehensive landscaping plan with more than 200 trees, 1,000 shrubs and hedgerows, 1,000 shrubs, sorry, and hedgerows which consist of more than 3,000 individual plants. They're also proposing wildflower areas and grassed areas. With respect to land levels and finished floor levels, each property will have a relatively flat garden, and they will all have level access to each of the main doors. The application seeks for the core path to be rerouted from the area in black to the area just below it, which is shown in green. The rerouting itself is not considered to raise any concerns, but as seen in the consultation responses from roads and the sustainability team, there were concerns with regards to land levels and the gradient of the path. As it stands, the core path is a relatively flat route with good accessibility, and it is required to allow the rerouting is required to allow the necessary infrastructure to be introduced, but as shown, would become steeper with the proposed arrangements. We've discussed the rerouting with interested parties, including the Access Forum, Transportation Team and Sustainability Team. None of these have an objection to the slight shift in the route, but we think that a more suitable gradient can be achieved. We've had some discussions with the developer at this point. We've come up with alternative plans, but we wouldn't want to see any worsening of the current situation. It does appear that that this is not the intention of the developer, and we think that we can work to a good result. We've already seen alternative arrangements, but the original cross-section, which I've put up on the screen here, shows large areas of level ground with a number of steeper gradients, and we feel that a better arrangement could be achieved by making the flat sections shorter and the gradients less steep. Therefore, as part of Appendix 1, we're proposing a condition for a technical assessment to take place separately and to basically keep this as an acceptable gradient. In respect of Condition 5, the proposal is in accordance with the earlier approved phasing plan, and there are no concerns raised in relation to flood risk and drainage, with the swale and pond designs designed to an adoptable standard by Scottish Water. There are no trees on this part of the development site, and significant planting is proposed. Our contamination advisors have raised no concerns, but conditions are also suggested. And although further exploratory works are required and potential mitigation for past coal mining works, the Coal Authority have raised no objections based on the level of information submitted. Licensing will also offer sufficient control in respect of the safety and stability of the land. With regards to the construction and environmental method plan, there were some issues with these on earlier phases, which appear to have died down a little bit at the moment, but we're looking to reiterate this through a further condition. The transport impact of the development has been assessed and raises no concerns, and appropriate travel plans, which include sustainable travel, are in place. The noise impact of the development and air quality impact assessments are considered to raise no concern following assessment by the Environmental Health Team, and providing the recommendations of the report are implemented, are acceptable. Public art is proposed throughout the wider scheme, and consists of a number of Corten steel panels. These are to be delivered in 2032, but form part of the underlying legal agreement as well for the wider site. And finally, I couldn't find a picture for archaeology, but this relates to Condition 6 and 7. Although there appears to have been some evidence of potential habitation on or close to the site in the distant past, archaeological advice has been sought, and they are happy that these conditions have been satisfied for the phases of development seen here. So just in summary, we are recommending an approval of phases 2B and 2C for the reasons given in the report, and the recommendation is subject to conditions listed in Appendix 1, the details of which will be assessed and monitored by planning officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. I suppose the overarching question that's in my mind is that we are about to pass or not pass this paper today, but within it, there are conditions which were laid down, discussed earlier, not all of which have been met. Some are still in progress. What comfort can you give us that we're not signing a blank check here?
So I believe that every condition has been met or partially met. For example, in relation to the core path, we're looking at the rerouting. What I'm saying we don't accept today is the gradient and the land levels relating to that. So we believe that there will be an alternative to that. For example, the flat sections which were shown on the earlier plan could be made shorter, and that would mean that the gradients of this what are now short, steep sections could be levelled out. Hopefully that answers your question, Chair.
But I mean, it does rather depend on agreement being reached, because at that moment, you and the developer have a slightly different view of this. So, we would like to think that what you're proposing is going to be the dominant argument. And, we might not be happy with having the greater than 5% gradients. So why, how do we accept that? Stuart, you wanted to come in on that one?
Yeah, I'll pass it over to Stuart.
Good morning. So when we first became aware that this was part of the application, we were a bit concerned because it's a good quality, it's a high quality active travel route at the moment. So we did express concern through colleagues in planning. The developer or the agents had proposed a design that met the minimum standards as opposed to the current standard, which is better than the minimum standard. In other words, they got the maximum gradients and just applied them. So we obviously threw the toys at the pram, because we're not very happy about that, especially in all seriousness for disabled users, because it's a well-used path, and want to make sure that it's if it has to be moved, then it's moved in a manner which allows it to continue to be used by all users, of course. They've come back with the subsequent technical design, which is a substantial improvement on what was originally proposed, so that the gradients are less, and ultimately they do require subsequent to plan permission technical approval from the council as roads authority. So that's where we've still got a measure of control to make sure that they achieve what's required.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful. And the various other things in here, Jacob, that in various places say, to be agreed, etc. I mean, again, would you be coming back to us if you're losing the argument in any of these?
Yes, so if it was going to change the decision outcome, we'd come back to committee. Just running through the conditions. Let me pull up the page. So in terms of land investigations and remediation, there has already been some done on the site. The indication is that there will be no issues here. If there were issues, then we'd come back to committee. In terms of the core path, we are working towards something that is more acceptable, as Stuart says. And then the other conditions that follow, so landscaping is more of a compliance condition. So we're saying that they do, as they've told us in the information that they've submitted. But what I've added in there is that if the plants, for example, were to become diseased or die, within the first 5 years of them being planted, that they would need to be replanted. So just adds an extra safeguard in there. Same with the air quality condition. So they've proposed a number of measures in there, and we want to ensure that those measures are going to be implemented. And we then have a condition that is legal and binding that we can go back to them on. And then the construction environment management plan. That is more to do with the past history of the site. There were some issues a couple of months ago where certain developers were not following the plans that they put forward. So it just gives us another lever to say, this is something that you've agreed to, this is a legal binding condition. And if you don't do as you say, you will do, we can take enforcement action.
Okay, thanks. Any other members? Councillor McTaggart, followed by Councillor Law.
Thanks, Chair. Start by saying that I'm disappointed that there's no representatives for the developers, because I've got a number of concerns about this development. It's so very well having all these conditions and all these wonderful things that they're going to do with trees, etc., and public art in 2032. But that core path, Lawrence Hunter and I had a meeting with Miller, Persimmons, and the Alan Water and the construction, I can't write in my head the name of the construction, anyway. We had a meeting with them, and we were guaranteed that there would be consultation prior to this, any changes being made to that path. There's been no consultation. I was talking to Lawrence last week, and there's been no consultation. So they've just, this has been a pattern with these developers. They go ahead and do things, and then they come back and say, oh, sorry, we really shouldn't have done that, but it's done now, similar to what happened with the trees, etc. So it's people like me, Councillor Law, Councillor Barzilli, Councillor Coyne, who get the issues coming for the people who are disadvantaged by the fact that the developers pay no attention to the impact that their decisions are having on the general public who have lived there for decades. So I'm disappointed they're not there, because I would have liked to ask them quite a few questions regarding the failures to comply to the very first day of this development. Now, it's no secret that Kilmarnockshire Council didn't want this development. That's no secret. However, we've had to accept it because they won their appeal. But myself, Councillor Harrison, as I said, Lawrence Hunter, we've had meetings with the developers. We've had meetings that where we've received assurances that things will improve, things will improve. Got to the point where I was insisting that we took enforcement action because they were just totally ignoring us time upon time. And while you say that things have improved, Jacob, they have marginally, but there's still a lot of disruption to people's lives, and there's still a lot of ignoring of conditions. Specifically around the core path, I would be saying I need assurances, and I would like it minuted that I want assurances that these developers will be more inclined to understand that these conditions are legally binding. They're not just to be lifted and laid when it suits them. And I would like it minuted that I need assurances that this core path, which we spent a lot of money on for the active travel route, and that is now being rerouted to suit the developer, the core path will be the same as the one that they are moving. And also that they're going to understand that the disruption to the neighbouring residents should be minimal. And it should be understood that people have to live their lives regardless of whether there's development going on there. Sorry for the rant, but I'm really incensed by the fact that it seems that they seem to have no respect for the people around there, and it just upsets me. Thanks.
Do I understand, pardon me, that your question is, can I have some assurance we will not get into this?
I did say at the
Right.
beginning, sorry, Chair, I did say I would like assurances. So yes, thank you.
Yeah, so there's a lot in that, councillor. So it's not for want of trying. We have invited them to this meeting today. We invited them to the Access Forum as well, which is run by Lawrence. And so far they are meeting statutory requirements in terms of applying for planning permission. As Stuart said, there will be other acts that they need to conform with. So Lawrence's team also has a consent process where this rerouting will be advertised through the Land Reform Act. So there are separate consent processes and separate advertisement processes for the core path. So whatever we approve today is not the be all and end all. There's still technical approval needed from Stuart's team. And what I'm saying is we need to air out those issues through that condition at this point now. In terms of the condition itself, so we've said about the proposed finishes, including surfacing, lighting, rest areas. So we're not looking to approve anything that's going to make that situation any worse for users of that path. And if, you know, there was objection, and there will be opportunities for the public to potentially make their comments known, it could, you know, it could go further. So Scottish Government lead on that process through the Land Reform Act. But we're just looking at it from a planning perspective at this point, and yeah, I've recommended that condition. Just in terms of the developers, there's multiple developers on this site, so we've got to be careful that we're not pointing the finger at one individual. Well, yeah, we've got to be careful that we're not pointing the finger at one individual developer. There's at least 3 developers on the site at the moment, and there may be more in the future. Have I answered all your questions there, Councillor?
I would say, the question was, can we have assurances? So can we ensure that that is needed?
Can we have assurances from the developers that conditions won't be met without me having to send 45 emails to before I get an answer?
So I can't speak on behalf of the developer, but the assurances are the conditions that are there and the processes that we can follow. So if these conditions are not being met, not being agreed, then we can go down the enforcement route.
Thank you.
I have a list of questions. I'll take them. First of all, Jacob, can I just say your presentation was spot on. It was a really good one. Nice to see it. So my first one, just Jane kind of covered a lot about the path, but it was just that I know that in the previous ones there was meant to be slight changes while they were doing stuff on that core path, and there was issues of the surface if there was any temporary path, because I don't think they took any kind of thought over wheelchair users, people with buggies and whatnot. I don't know what kind of path they were getting put down, but it did seem that I think Lawrence's team really had to push for that temporary path to be of a good standard. So first of all, I just wanted to ask that question in regards if there is a temporary path while they're making the changes, that it is of a good standard that would be able to be used by all users.
So yes, the temporary path is proposed, but the details of that would be with Lawrence's team, not through planning. So it is meant to be a temporary arrangement. Lawrence's team would have to agree and accept whatever those arrangements are. I believe that the plan is to use the access track for the sustainable drainage infrastructure to begin with, so that will be relatively flat and hard surfaced. It is meant to be able to take a vehicle, but there will be a separate consent process for the temporary path itself.
Okay, thanks. 3.6. Page 15, it's saying that at this phase there's no formal children's play facilities in this phase. Can I just ask, what phase is that going to happen, and how many houses will be built by the time we get to that phase?
So it's already under development. So phase 2A, the Persimmons phase that is currently being constructed, that bit of the entrance is going to have the first play park. There's also another play park which is in phase 3, which is part of the Miller development. So I don't have the exact timelines, but I imagine within the next 6 months we will see those play park and play areas. They're approved as the master plan, and again, if the work delivered, we could look at our enforcement processes.
I don't remember us seeing any of, because my understanding is, and maybe people who are been on the planning a bit longer than me, that when the play parks come along, we're given kind of this is what's going to be on the play park and the type of equipment. I don't believe that we have seen that. I just bring it up because I know there was issues with previous planning applications in Clickmannanshire, and it has been a big issue. So that's just, I'm concerned about that and the standard of play equipment for that site.
So the play park, in a sense, is separate to this because it is in that earlier phase. I have not seen detail into that play park. I'd have to come back to you on that issue, and in terms of timescales as well.
That would be really appreciated because I can't remember seeing details of it, but then again, it could have been, I don't know, I can't remember when the decision was, it last year or 2 years ago?
That was in 2A, was it? Yeah, which we have already approved.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I can't remember seeing the details of the play equipment that was going to go in the play park.
Will you supply that, Jacob?
Yes, so I'll send that on to you, Chair. I'll look for the details, send it on to you. But it's been approved in the in phase 2A and as part of the master plan as to where the play parks will be delivered as the overall site.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. So usually we're then given told what could be on that, what kind of equipment's going to be on that. It's just, I'm sorry, it's just that there has been a huge issue before in regards to play parks and what goes in them and whatnot. So that's why I'm just really thinking about that.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. I think I'll have to look into that and come back to you on that. But it formed part of the decision on that 2A phase. But I will double check it and come back to you if that's okay.
Can I continue with my questions? Right.
Your vote.
I just, because there's a lot of that. 3.7A, just in regards to the coal legacy, it just states coal mining legacy of the site remains a material consideration, but is considered that if, emphasis on if, the works are carried out in accordance with the details submitted, then these risks can be adequately mitigated. Are you able to help give me confidence in the word if?
Yeah, so all our assessments are an if the information is followed in accordance with what they've submitted. In this case, there's been discussion with the Coal Mining Authority. They're the experts in this area, and they have guided us in terms of raising no objection. What they're saying is that there is a level of risk on the site because there was previous coal mining, that the developers are aware of that, but the actual mitigation hasn't fully been agreed at this point. But they can cover that through their licensing. So they will do the technical assessments to ensure that the land is safe and stable. So it doesn't need to come back to us. They haven't suggested that we apply any conditions. They've just said there's no objections, providing they follow all of the information that they've done. And the Coal Mining Authority also have other powers if they didn't follow what they've said they're going to do.
For clarity on that, the Coal Authority would become the enforcement agency in that case.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, there would.
Thank you. Fiona, you? Who's the boss in it?
Oh, no, I said it's still going.
Oh, you're still going.
Still going. I didn't say there was so page 17, the transport impact 3.84, it goes on about how the most visible intervention is the roundabout connecting B908. I drive that most days. I'm concerned that the gradient of which that is sitting on. I'm concerned about when the water comes. I'm concerned when ice comes. Can I get reassurances on that? And also just, the setup is just, it just seems like when you come out the roundabout, especially if you're coming towards Socky, you get to that side. I believe that maybe the turning is to make traffic slow down, but there's a few times I've had to swerve because cars coming from Alva to Sauchie have nearly hit me. And I don't think I'm the only one. I can see nodding of heads. So that is a concern.
So the roundabout has been subject of obviously technical approval from us, but also an independent road safety audit process, stage 1 and stage 2, so a kind of detailed analysis by an independent auditor. And they did raise some relatively minor points, but nothing that would deem us to be concerned about the design. What I would say there, because the roundabouts work best when there are balanced flows, so that the flows coming towards it are balanced. So if there's a dominant flow, then that tends to increase the approach speeds and passing speed through the roundabouts. So obviously from the development site itself, it's relatively minor. So that's probably causing driver behaviour to be not as it should be. So the auditors mentioned that. I think there is a mistake being made in the white lining, the lining. So you're asked to turn left. So that's obviously not correct. So that will be rectified. But it's one of the auditors suggested that we monitor the operation of the roundabout, which we're trying to do. And it should balance and improve once the more houses come on stream and it generates more traffic. I don't have any in terms of the design, in terms of this, the gradients and the falls. It's all within the specification set by the design manual for roads and bridges. That's obviously all part of the designer's proposals and our technical approval and the road safety auditors the review once it's subsequent to its completion. We do have some other issues more related to the anti-skid materials that have gone down, which we think are not in the best order, but those can be dealt with. And it's not adopted yet, either the roundabout. It's not part of the public road yet. It's still got to go through that. So anything else that comes up, then we can get the developer to rectify.
So if we are monitoring it and we do see an issue, does that then fall on the developer to rectify those issues? And also just, there's a lot of kind of grass verges around that. Who maintains those?
So the first question, yes, we do have as long as if they have stepped out with the requirements of the technical approval, and we deem that to be the case, then we can get them. So one of them is that we don't think the anti-skid on approach has gone down particularly well. In some cases, there's cracking and the rest of it. So I would think that over the longer period could fail quicker than it should. So we've got an ongoing debate with the developer and the subcontractor. The large grass areas I'm also not sure of the position regarding those. In theory, they will require to be maintained. Couldn't honestly tell you who exactly owns that land. Honestly, I'm not sure, to be honest, Councillor.
Land services might be able to help you in that regard. If that's all.
Or I can help you. We can find out who owns the land and then we can tell you from there.
Sorry, I continue.
Just what you're thinking, Councillor Law. Can I ask Stuart about the roundabout and the bias you were giving to traffic flows? And you talked about a dominant traffic flow. Did you say that the design of the roundabout favoured them or disfavoured it?
No, I mean, as it is at the moment, there's a weak flow from the development site itself because it's just contractors, and so the through route, obviously from the Alva side to Sauchie, dominates, so in both directions sort of thing, so that it means then that they're not interrupted by appropriate traffic, so then that slows it down and then it kind of sort of balances out, makes it safer, makes the approach speeds more likely to be what it's meant to be, but at the moment it's kind of high. So the road safety auditor had pointed that out, which was obviously a point. There's nothing we can do about that until such times as the development comes on stream. So it's just a matter of, do we keep an eye on it, as it were? Anecdotally, we can't have somebody sit there and watching them, but obviously anecdotal evidence from people who use it, like your good selves, would be useful. Yeah, if there's a particular issue, and we'll obviously have to make sure that if there's an issue and we can do something about it, is the thing. If it's just a high speed traffic, then all we can do is ask the police to go there and see if they're breaking the law. But I'm not. It's probably not ideal, sort of the perfect roundabout, but it's still within the design, the design requirements of the design manual for roads and bridges on which your approval is based.
Is it a full roundabout or a mini?
It's a full
A
roundabout.
full roundabout.
Yeah, it's a small one, but it's still under the.
So my next one is the MSC adoption plan. So it's the one that's got the roads. So I just wanted to check. So there's red that says it denotes the adopted carriageway, blue adopted footway, yellow is the adopted shared surface, green adopted verge. So I've got a few questions because one bit is absolutely ridiculous, but it's got the adopted footway. It just looks like it's honestly maybe a slab wharf going into somebody's house that we're adopting. Apparently, the grass verges, I just want to check, is it the council that are adopting those ones, or is it the factor that's adopting those ones? Because they're absolutely pointless. Is the only way I could describe them. And also then, we're going on to the roads and the road surfaces. My pet hate is monoblocking, and I've brought it up before, and I just think it's crazy if we are adopting roads that are monoblocking. We need to, and my understanding is that they should be maintained as in, yeah, they're meant to allow water to go through, but when it gets filled with gunk, that doesn't happen. You then get into the winter, it freezes, it's like an ice rink. There's areas down Alloa Park that are a prime example of that. It turns into an ice skating rink. And I honestly don't know how we would maintain those monoblocks or have the funds to maintain those monoblocks on those road surfaces.
So this might answer your earlier question as well. So all of the open areas in the site as part of the landscape strategy are to be dealt with the missives. So a factoring arrangement on the site. That they're also looking to implement a residence group on the site. So that'll be led by the developers in this case. Hopefully that answers your questions on the open areas. There are some slight anomalies. So the drainage infrastructure that'll be adopted by Scottish Water and looked after by Scottish Water, but that also incorporates some planting and a large area of phase 2A, phase 2B and 2C. In relation to the surfacing types, I'll maybe put another plan up on the screen just to make it clearer. And then maybe hand over to yourself, Stuart. So these are the phases separated out. So this is phase 2B and phase 2C. And then details of the different surfacing types which are proposed. Stuart, I don't know if you want to talk about those.
Yeah, only to say that it's a kind of replication of what's happened before. There is a debate about block paving at the moment. I wouldn't disagree that there, in some instances, block paving's less than ideal. We are trying to move away from block paving, but we've used it in the council area for decades in many developments. I'm not in the maintenance team, but we have had issues with it, and we have had issues where it's been used on relatively steep surfaces that it can be prone to be more slippy than would otherwise likely to be the case. But what is proposed, if a developer comes forward with something like this and it forms part of, it's in the national design standards that they are permitted to use it, it's difficult to say, no, you can't use that. On the other hand, I'm always keen to try advocate for new arrangements. So if the committee felt so disposed, if they wanted to try and change the use of the extensive use of block paving as proposed here, I'm happy to discuss that with the developer. Ultimately, it will be a lot cheaper for them because the alternative normally is asphalt thread chips, which has a similar. The whole purpose of block paving is that they indicate to the driver that you're in a different area and the driver's not king, and it's a shared surface and you have to drive appropriately. So it's a kind of messaging arrangement. So the block paving does that, and it does that well. To be honest, you clearly know you're not on an asphalt roadway. But asphalt with red chips is the alternative to block paving, and it's a lot cheaper for the developer. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were to be, we're happy to consider that. So I'm happy to take that message. Questions, see if you want to change the design.
Yeah.
So
Would that then affect, obviously, the water, would the drainage then have to change if it didn't get put in?
no, good.
And could they use different kind of red chips, or not red chips, but different colours of chips in order to differentiate the different parts of it?
I don't think so, to be honest. I don't think there's different colours of chips. You get these clear coated red chips, or you get black chips. I don't think you can get multicoloured chips. But it won't change the surfaces will be in crossflow, all going that way sort of thing. So and the drainage will still work well. I would also say that the block paving is not designed for water to pass through it. We don't accept porous paving. Get that in other areas, but as a roads authority, porous paving to be is inherently not wise, because you can't pass water through road construction surfaces and expect it to last for a long time. So we don't accept porous paving. So they could be made into asphalt. It just feel like a different surface. But it would be red chips, either or black chips. Or, it just looks like a road then. It just becomes a road. So you could argue whether that's as safe as it would be the red chip. Normally saying, and we have tried it in other areas and it's been relatively successful.
Sorry, I'm going to cut in here. I'm not quite sure if we're wandering down a side road here, excuse the pun. Are we locking ourselves into block paving by touching the paper today, or is that something that can be discussed offline?
So we are approving the detail here. What I would say is that there are 3 different types of road here, and there are 3 different types of surfacing arrangement proposed. So you've got a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary route. And as a hierarchy, you're trying to reduce the speeds on each of these routes. I don't know if Stuart will agree. I'm sure you can push in, but I think it's important to have that differentiation. And if there isn't other chips that you can propose, then block paving seems like the most logical route. So we are looking at the detail of this design today, and that's what we're asking for you to approve.
Are there any instances where the block paving, as depicted at the moment, is not on a level surface, but it's on a sloping surface?
So there is a slight gradient on all of the site, but nothing significant across these 2 phases. I don't know if you want to come in.
There are types of block paving which do generate slippy conditions. There's clay pavers are really bad for it. Sort of thing. They hold the water. I know that you personally, if you want to lived in our Park Drive, and so you have the personal experience of block paving becoming difficult. But on a flat surface, I'm not sure that I'm not sure I could say to a developer you cannot use block paving on a flat surface if they want to do it. To be honest, it's probably more the aesthetic issue, which is the argument, which is obviously sits with the colleagues in planning. We'd probably we're happy enough with an alternative. I can obviously Jacob makes a good point about the kind of the reducing the road such that it's appropriate to to the level of use that it's got. But I think the change from block paving to asphalt with the red chips, I don't think that introduces any undue increased road safety risk. And it's probably the argument is probably more aesthetic, I think, really, whether we use block paving or asphalt. It's probably my colleagues in maintenance would prefer asphalt with red chips because it's durable, longer, durable, and the like. But the colleagues of planning may disagree for aesthetic reasons.
And would asphalt and red chips fit in with the profiling you were talking about, Jacob? You know, the primary, secondary, tertiary.
Well, I don't believe so. So the primary routes here are to be tarmacs. The secondary routes are the asphalt with the little red chips in them, and the junctions, yeah, regular paving, and the tertiary routes are the block paving. So I think it's got a clear depiction as it stands. But I'm not a technical expert in this, so obviously I do need to pass back to Stuart if you see any technical reason why this wouldn't be approved.
I think the use of block paving and flat cul-de-sacs is not an issue, in all honesty. Really, as long as they're properly constructed, and that's our job to make sure that they are properly constructed and properly laid, then I think we've used it for decades, over many years, in other areas, quite successfully. Occasional maintenance issues have to be dealt with, especially in manholes and dogs. I honestly can't think of a reason. I understand the point about the secondary tertiary point, but I just don't think there's a strong reason to say no, you cannot use asphalt with red chips. And I'm going to say my own personal opinion is I was always in favour of block paving for that reason, because it signals to the driver that they are not kind and they're on a shared surface. I've kind of shifted it a bit, to be honest, because maintenance is an issue. And the developer will be quite happy because it's much more expensive to install block paving than it is asphalt.
Sure. Just before we move on, if we have anyone, I think Clark wants to work.
No, I just wanted to go from our planning colleagues there and maybe to provide some comfort to elected members in relation to the actual adoption side. The developer has to make an application to adopt in any of these areas, and those areas have to be to an adoptable standard before the council even take on. So I just thought that you should be aware of that as well. You may not, that's like almost another layer of protection there for the council. It's not like they go and hand over the roads for completion. They have to make an application to the council, and the council has to be satisfied that they have reached the conditions. So that's just another layer of consent.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Lord, do you feel this is a deal breaker?
Well, my concern is, like, I know it might seem just a wee thing to people, but it can be a big issue when you live in those areas, that it does become slidey and kind of unmanageable. And I also think, from a council point of view of the maintenance of these areas, that I don't think we have the funds to deal with monoblock roads in the future if they become damaged, because the maintenance, as Stuart Collins says, is a lot higher. I can't put price in that just now, but it is a lot higher, because I have spoken to road colleagues. My only other thing would be to say that if it did kind of go ahead in these, could there a condition be put in that they have to provide grit boxes, because this area wouldn't come under the policy that we would be gritting the pavements or those main roads, but could that then fall under the developer through the factor to put grit boxes down?
Sure.
I don't think so, to be honest, because it's an adopted road. It's the council as roads authority. It's their duty to maintain it in terms of winter maintenance. So if a private arrangement is, that would be, and grit boxes are, a source of great contention, and they are, the maintenance is expensive. So we've got to have certain criteria met before we'll introduce a grit box. And for a flat cul-de-sac, that would be the lowest priority in terms of whether someone would get a grit box. So I'm just being honest, that's not my area of expertise. It's my colleague in maintenance, but I'm pretty sure that would be the case.
Well, I didn't think it would fall under the council, that's why I thought, right, could we do it? And another way to get those grip boxes, so I wouldn't be proposing that, you know, the council would then put grip boxes down and we would maintain that, because we do not have the funding for that. If it went to the red chips, is there any kind of additional traffic calming measures that could get put into these areas that would then help to differentiate the fact that it is a road?
I think essentially we need to be looking at the plans that, you know, we've been assessing. There may or may not be other traffic calming measures that could be introduced, but we need to make an assessment of the plans that we've been presented. I'll again to Stu.
So maybe saying, so the people who are saying that are buying a house in plot 15 and they're dealing with that road, and then that's red chipped, are we saying that they're safer, or their pedestrians are safer than the people who, or not safer than the people who are buying a house in road 70? Because to me then, because that's like, we're saying that we're different. If we're saying that we're not going to do the red chips because we still think it takes away from the differentiating, people won't realise what's a road and that it's a shared surface. But what about those ones as well? Because obviously it's one track, going to be a lot smaller.
I'd like to interrupt again. I think we need to bring this to some kind of conclusion. Are you asking the committee to actually veto the use of pavers? Are you wanting to suggest that the committee should take that view, or are you just seeking clarification on mitigation?
I'll propose that those road bits should be the red stones rather than the pavers.
We have a seconder for that proposal.
Can I come in just before?
Yeah, Councillor Duffy, of course you can.
Would it be an option just to not adopt the paved part? Or do we have to adopt the whole road? Would it be possible to say, right, we're adopting the road from the junction for a distance of 150 metres, and at that point that'd be where the block paving starts, and we don't adopt that part?
I'm pretty sure the development won't want that. They want the liabilities, and that's been designed to adoptable standards, so they'll want it adopted and not have a kind of an alternative arrangement. And I think the householders, their design position is that new houses should have an appropriate frontage onto an adoptable road. So our recommendation would be that it is done to a design standard. But also say in terms of the safety aspect of it, I don't think the black chips, black asphalt, red chips, the difference has any difference on road safety. I think that type of design is inherently such that vehicle speeds are forced low, so they've got narrow carriageways, you've got tight bends, still appropriate for visibility. So the design speed should be, that's the case, should be 10 miles an hour. So it should be really low, so it's safe for users. So I don't think we would be saying you need to put additional traffic cameras. That's just not a technical view. Notwithstanding the other comments have been made.
Thank you, Stuart. Well, okay, we have.
I'll second.
You're seconding that. Yes, we'll have to put that to some kind of, do you want to know at this point? Are you sure?
Sorry, first time using the mic. I'm not actually sure that it would be competent to make that amendment at this stage. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, councillor, but bearing in mind that the scheme has outlined we're agreeing various details today that set out in previous conditions, but you're talking about actually the road surface of the development as a whole. And given that part of the development already has detailed permission and is under construction, I'm not sure it's competent to make these changes at this time. I mean, I might need some support from my legal colleague, but it gives me some disquiet about whether or not we can actually do that. The only other route I can see if members really have big conditions about that is to defer the application so we can come back and give you some comfort from the developer about what different road surfacing they are using and how that's going to fit into the scheme. But I'm not really sure that that's an amendment or change that can be made in a matter specified by conditions application. Certainly not anything I've ever come across before. So, I'm just trying to help the committee, but not putting you down a route that actually wouldn't be competent moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Colin. Very much, Ben.
Yeah, I would need to go and look at the legals into it. I wouldn't be able to just give you it offhand. So, if this is something that the committee want to take forward, I'm wondering whether there's an alternative, Pauline, and maybe we could have an adjournment for say 10 minutes, just so I can have a conversation with my planning colleagues, and then maybe come back to the committee if that was all right. Chair?
Would it be possible to leave this one just sticking to the wall, go through the question phase to see if there's any other issues raised that we can include holistically? Because I have 4 issues that thematically I'd like to address as well.
Okay, but you think it might lead to a similar kind of situation?
Not really. I think, well, yes, it's a yes or no in my particular issues.
In that case, we'll suspend. Oh, Brian, sorry, please come in.
Would there be an impact if we deferred the meeting? Because it'd be a nice opportunity then if we get other questions and go away, get more detail, another chance to invite people, developers to come and answer questions perhaps as well, another opportunity. Would there be any impact or any negative consequences if we did defer this and bring it back later?
I'll ask the planner to comment on that.
Only that it will delay the developers, but if I'm sensing a degree of disquiet from members that if you really don't feel able to make various decisions today, that would be the only route for you.
Well, I suppose to some extent it depends what we feel as a group is the importance of the issue. If it's a minor issue or if it's a major issue, if it's a deal breaker basically. And what do the members feel generally about this point? Is it something we want to decide on today? Anyone want to comment on that? Anyone online? Any views?
Yeah, I believe that having listened to the evidence that's been presented to us, I believe that we can make a decision today. I don't believe that deferring the decision in any way is going to reach any different decisions from the one we're going to make today. So I would just go for making a decision today.
You feel your yellow light's on, but we're not hearing anything.
Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yep.
I'm similar to Kenny on this. I'm conscious of the advice we're given about the competency of what's been put forward, and in absence of assurance that what we're doing is entirely competent, I'm not sure what the delay would serve. I'm not sure what purpose it would serve. I'm kind of the same view. I think we've got to a point where we're able to make a decision today.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Right. Donald. Outline, before we decide on the break.
Yeah, I've 4 quick. First off, Jacob, thanks for your visualizations. They're very helpful. I have 4 quick themes. There's 2 allocated car parking spaces to each dwelling. Can you tell me whether the developers make provision for electricity charge points? And if not, could we condition that? Yes, so the developer has made provision in each of its properties for these phases for EV charging points. It's more to do with the quality impact assessment and the mitigation measures there, and it does form part of the conditions. So the mitigation measures for air quality are in condition 5. So we're expecting that each of these properties will have an EV charging point. That's grand, thank you. And it kind of links to Safi on this point. Could you give me a quick overview in terms of maintenance responsibility moving forward?
So we've got a couple of main elements. We've got the active travel route, we've got the SUD scheme, we've got the road layout in terms of potential adoption, and then we've got the open spaces, the play area, etc. Can you give me an overview in terms of who's actually responsible ultimately for maintaining these areas? I'm presuming there's a backing arrangement, but I'd like to get a bit of clarity on those various components.
Yes, so in a nutshell, there's multiple parties that are responsible. So the drainage infrastructure in terms of the Suds Pond and the swale, that will eventually be Scottish Water. The play areas, the open spaces, the green areas within the site, they'll be dealt with through the missives and the factoring arrangements, as the landscaping information suggests. In terms of roads, the roads will be adopted by us eventually. So up until that point will remain the developer's responsibility, but hopefully they'll be to an adoptable standard and they'll come to us as council. And same with the active travel route. So correct me if I'm wrong. Oh no, go on then.
So the active travel route for this purpose is deemed to be an adopted route. So it's the council obviously got funding and built, so it's our asset. So that's why we're quite twitchy over. It's proper redesign that has to be relocated. So they'll be told they have to have technical approval to make the changes. So even the planning permission in place for it still needs technical approval, but also requires, as Jason has explained, the processes of the land format, because the route itself is a core path, forms part of the core path network. So there's legislation behind that, and it's quite onerous as far as I'm aware to sort of make arrangements, including consultation with the local access forums. Understand.
So just for clarity, the open spaces, the play area, and some of the adopted, some of the novel road layouts would fall under the factoring responsibility for the development.
Well, apart from the road, so the green spaces throughout the development will fall within the factoring arrangements. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Moving to the public art. The way I read that, we are providing 8 to 10 steel panels through consultation, each at a unit cost of £250, which is its most optimistic, £2,500 plus the time involved in consultation, which to me seems entirely inadequate in terms of what a normal percentage for art would require, and also delivery in 2032. I'm just wondering if there's another approach to this, because ultimately I would expect the residents in the new dwellings to be involved in any sort of consultation. I'm just wondering if there's a way we could set up some sort of bond or account that each phase of the development contributes to in terms of public art, rather than waiting another 7 years to 2032. Yeah. Do you get any thoughts on that?
So this public art strategy is the same as one that was previously approved on one of the other phases. Because the council's already approved it, I don't think we're really in a position to deviate. The public art is at a cost of £250 per house. My understanding is that the timing is because of the time it's going to take to bring the other phases on board. And also there will be community consultation as part of that public art strategy, and hopefully involvement from local people, local artists, that kind of thing. It's also underwritten by the Section 75 agreement. So if there were not to deliver this, or it didn't meet the timeframes that are given in the public art strategy, there's obviously other repercussions that we could look at.
Okay, Thanks, Jacob. That's entirely my misreading. So that's good. It's £250 per housing unit, which is very positive. How's that funding in terms of the phasing being handled though? Is it going into a holding account?
So it's on-site delivery by the developers. My understanding is that Allen Water own the majority of this site. The Section 75 it's for all of the phases. How they deliver that and in terms of the money is up to them, but they've given us a strategy. They said it'll be delivered by this point and we're expecting it to be delivered by then. For this particular application, we're not dealing with any of the finances. But if we didn't think it was up to scratch, we could obviously challenge them.
Okay, I'll maybe pick that up with you later on. And finally, there was we're touching upon the area zoned for the school. Are we satisfied from the Education Authority that we have enough space for the potential for a new school? Although I realise the provisions were the expansion of Craigbank.
I believe so. So there is an allocated site just to the south of the two phases where we've been looking. The costs have been agreed. I know Appendix 3, which is it's just for your information, says that the costs are to be agreed. But we received first payment this week, which was early from the developers. And it's for us to come up with that detailed design. So we've been speaking with assets teams. We've seen some very high level designs. We think we can deliver something on that site. We just need to follow the Section 75 agreement, and that will come on later phases.
Thank you. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, if there are no further immediate questions, we'll have that little break, allow the professional staff to have the discussion as to whether our motion is competent. When we proceed with that, and if it's not competent, it'd be good to outline exactly why it isn't when the return from deliberations. So we'll reconvene at slide 2.